All right, guys, I'm back again with another what you need to know to apply. This time I'm talking about the great state, my home state of Utah. So I'm going to cover the details of the draw system. I'm going to cover the application cost to apply. I'll cover things like what you can actually apply for, depending on whether you're a resident or a non-resident. I'm going to cover some of the intricacies and details of their draw system. And at the end, I'll probably pop in and talk a little bit about some of the seasons that are available to you. So that's going to be the format. I'll just jump right in and get started. So first, when can you apply? So Utah's draw is going to open up March 20th, and it's going to have a deadline of April 24th. So you've got that month basically between March 20th and April 24th to make your hunt selections and get a chance to apply for hunts in the great state of Utah. In order to apply in Utah, you have to set up an online account, and I think that's the easiest way to do it. It's a simple process. You just jump in, create yourself an account. That's if you've never applied before. If you have applied before, you should have a login that you can just simply put in on their website. They have a link right on their homepage, and it's a pretty simple process to go ahead and get your application in the state of Utah. Another pretty common question that I get about Utah is, what do I have to have in order to apply? Now, Utah is one of those states that requires you to buy a hunting license before you can actually apply for those hunts. Now, there has been a slight price increase in the last few years. The cost for a resident is going to be $40 for an annual hunting license. It's going to be $120 for non-residents, which is a price hike that if you haven't applied in Utah for a few years, you're probably going to take note of, because it definitely has gotten more expensive to just apply. Now, that hunting license, when you purchase it, is valid for 365 days from the date of purchase. And I get asked a lot, can I apply 2 years with only purchasing one hunting license? And you can, where that's valid for 365 days. So in essence, how you would do that is you would buy your hunting license late in the draw cycle. You would apply the following year when that application season opens up in the state of Utah. You would apply early in that process. Thus, you would be able to apply 2 years on the same hunting license. Now, you don't actually have to have a valid hunting license once you draw a permit and get a chance to go hunting. When you actually draw that permit, you get a chance to go out into the field. That becomes all you need to then hunt. So it's not like you have to go back and rebuy a hunting license. So there's a little bit of a gaming of the system right there where you can save yourself some money if you want to apply properly every year. And like I said, you can apply 2 years on the same license if you want to. Now, there are some other associated costs along with applying in Utah. A resident is going to pay a $10 application fee per species. A non-resident is going to pay $16 per species when you apply. There's also going to be a 2.2% processing fee when you apply online. So those are just some added costs that you want to be aware of. All in, you're probably going to end up being maybe $160, $180, depending on what you apply for, but you're kind of in that neighborhood. It's just become the nature of most of these states. Like I said in previous videos, they either require you to front the cost of the tags that you apply for, or they require you to buy a hunting license to then apply. Utah is one of those states where you have to buy a hunting license, you don't have to front the cost of the permits, but it still is a financial consideration that you want to make before you decide to apply in the state of Utah. Next, I'm going to dive into what you can actually apply for. Now, there is a difference between being a resident and a non-resident and what you can apply for. So I will address residents first. So as a resident myself in the state of Utah, I can only apply for one limited entry species. So limited entry elk, limited entry deer, or limited entry antelope. I can also apply for one once-in-a-lifetime species, those species being moose, bighorn sheep, mountain goat, bison. I can only apply for one of those. And then I can only apply for one general season deer opportunity, either a general season deer hunt or the dedicated hunter program. Now, that's a change that was made this year. Prior to this year, you could actually apply and build points for both general season and dedicated hunter deer, but that is no longer the case. You have to pick or choose one or the other. Now, non-residents, the state of Utah allows you guys to apply for any and all species that you're interested in. So you can apply for all limited entry species, limited entry elk, limited entry antelope, limited entry deer. You can apply for all the once in a lifetime species, moose, sheep, goat, bison, and you can also apply for one of the general season deer opportunities, either dedicated hunter or general season deer. So there is a difference, and I would tell you, if you are a non-resident and you buy the hunting license to apply in the state of Utah, you might as well throw your application in for any and all species that you're interested in, because there is a random component to that draw, which I'm going to touch on here in a second. So be aware of that difference between resident and non-resident. I often get asked the question, as a resident, what would you put your focus on? It's hard for me to answer for everybody, because everybody's a little bit subjective in what they want to hunt. I would tell you that the limited entry elk opportunities in the state of Utah are much greater than the limited entry deer opportunities. Antelope I look as more of a filler type of species. So in my opinion, I think you probably ought to put your time and emphasis into applying for limited entry elk, building points, trying to draw those tags, and then applying for limited entry deer or limited entry antelope when you're in your waiting period for elk. So there is a waiting period for different species. Once you draw that tag, you have a time frame where you can't actually apply for that same species again. So just to revisit that, everybody's a little bit different. My opinion, I think you ought to be putting your points into limited entry elk, because we have a lot of limited entry elk units in the state of Utah, and the quality is generally really good. So that would be my advice to you. Since I noted the dedicated hunter program, I wanted to give you guys an idea of what that dedicated hunter program actually is, because this is a question I get asked quite a bit. So the dedicated hunter program is a 3-year program. You do have to draw into that program, and when you apply, you have to actually pick a unit and apply for that unit within the dedicated hunter system. Now, should you draw into that system, you are given the opportunity to harvest 2 deer in 3 years, so 2 bucks in 3 years. You can hunt the archery, the muzzleloader, and the rifle season. So you can hunt all 3 hunts, and like I said, you can harvest 2 bucks in 3 years, and you're in that program for 3 years. In exchange for that opportunity, you have to do 32 service hours for game and fish there in the state of Utah, or you can buy those hours out at a cost of $40 per hour. The cost of getting into the dedicated hunter program is actually more expensive as well. So for a resident, it's going to be $195. For a non-resident, you're going to be $1,047. Now for residents, I think the dedicated hunter program makes a lot of sense. You get a chance to do some service hours with game and fish, maybe get out on some projects, whether that's habitat or translocation of animals on the landscape. There's a lot of opportunities to get your dedicated hunter hours done. It allows you to hunt all the hunts on that unit and to really hunt hard and kill 2 bucks in 3 years. All my best bucks have come from general season units in the dedicated hunter program in the state of Utah. If you're someone that has the ability to hunt all 3 hunts or 4 hunts, if there's 2 rifle hunts, and you have the ability to scout, I think it's a great opportunity for you to find and kill maybe the best buck of your lifetime. Now for non-residents, it's a little bit harder to justify, because you do either have to pay for those service hours or actually show up in the state of Utah and do those service hours. The cost is also more expensive, but it's a guaranteed chance to hunt a lot in the state of Utah on those general season units. So I would take a hard look at the dedicated hunter program. I think it's an excellent option for a lot of people that just love mule deer hunting. The next question I would dive into is, what are the point systems? How does the draw work in the state of Utah? Now I'm going to talk about 2 different point systems, because they allocate permits through 2 different point systems: a bonus point hybrid system and then a true preference point system. So I'm going to talk about bonus points first. So your limited entry species, limited entry elk, limited entry deer, limited entry antelope, once in a lifetime species, moose, sheep, goat, bison, those are all allocated on a bonus hybrid system. And what they do is they take 50% of the permits for any given hunt, and they allocate those to the people with the most bonus points that apply for that hunt. The other 50% they are going to randomly allocate with weight given to the number of bonus points that you have. So your random odds get better the more bonus points you accrue, but a portion of those permits, 50%, are going to be randomly allocated. Now every year, I talk to people that simply say, I'm just buying bonus points in the state of Utah. I would tell you, don't buy bonus points in the state of Utah. Apply for hunts, because there is that random component of the draw, and you might as well have your name in the hat. If you draw a tag, it's going to be a phenomenal hunt. The odds are pretty dang tough, so you might as well have your name in there and get a chance to draw. Don't just buy bonus points in the state of Utah. Apply for hunts. You're going to get a point if you're unsuccessful in the draw anyway. So apply for hunts. To go along with this, another question I often get is what happens if there's an odd number of permits for a hunt that I apply for? So for example, let's say there's 5 permits. So what they're going to do is they're going to take the bulk of the permits, 3 in this example, and they're going to allocate those to the people with the most bonus points. The other 2 permits, they're going to randomly allocate. Again, your random odds get better with the more points you have. So that's how they're going to divide it. That is a change that happened in the last few years. It used to be that they would give the bulk of them in the random draw, but now they are actually giving the bulk of the permits, if there's an odd number, to people with maximum bonus points that apply for any given hunt. So be aware of that. One of the changes that Utah's made in the last few years is they actually bumped their draw back. And the reason that they did that is to give people an opportunity to see the number of permits that are going to be available for every hunt. Prior to that change, you were kind of going into it blind, especially for non-residents. You didn't really have an idea of how many permits they might allocate for a hunt. And if you've built up a lot of points, that's a problem because you can't really predict on when you might draw that guaranteed permit with the number of bonus points you have. So I would tell you, if you're getting up in there in points, you're looking for an opportunity to burn your points, take a good look at the newly released permit quotas for each and every hunt that you're considering to see if those have fluctuated either up or down. You can compare those numbers with the numbers in your insider account, and that'll give you a better idea on how many permits might be available, how many are going to go in the bonus point pass, and how many are going to be randomly allocated. So take a look at that, and like I said, that is primarily one of the reasons that Utah bumped their system later in the spring. So since they're now giving you that information, I think it would be smart of you to dive in and look at the permit quotas before you actually apply, especially if you got a lot of points. Let's jump down to preference points now. So general season deer tags, dedicated hunter deer tags are allocated on a preference point system, and it is a true preference point system, meaning the people with the most preference points that apply for any given hunt are going to be guaranteed those permits. There is no random component of that general season or dedicated hunter draw. Essentially, you're going to have the number of points that it's been taking at least, and probably one more depending on whether there's some point creep or not, to draw that tag. This is where I would give a major plug to your insider account and predictive draw odds that we just released a few weeks ago. You want to jump in that standalone draw odds page within your insider account, and you want to pay close attention to those predictive odds. You want to look at those. You want to compare those with the detailed draw odds page of the hunts you're considering. That can really help you predict what hunts you could draw going into 2025. Another question I get asked often is about hunt choices when you apply. Now, when you apply for general season deer in the state of Utah, you can apply up to 5 hunt choices. Now, Utah is a state where they're only going to consider every applicant's first choice before they move to any applicant's second choice. It's actually pretty rare when somebody would be allocated a hunt as a second choice. There might be some occasions for general season deer opportunities. Maybe there's some units that have private land or access issues where maybe some of those could be allocated as a second or a third choice. But generally speaking, it's pretty rare. Once you jump into limited entry species, elk, deer, it's almost unheard of. And if there is a permit that's allocated as a second choice, it's typically because it's got some issues with that hunt. It's mostly private land, it's got some access problems. So generally speaking, be aware of how hunt choices work. I would also throw in here, and I think this is worth noting, specifically for general season deer, if you draw any of your 5 hunt choices that you apply for, your points, your preference points will be purged. So be aware of that and consider how hunt choices work in the state of Utah. Another question I get is about group applications. So Utah does allow up to 4 people to apply in a group application for limited entry deer, limited entry elk, limited entry antelope, general season deer opportunities. Now, when you get into once in a lifetime species, you're not allowed to apply as a group. I often get asked, because it's different between every state, how does Utah handle group points when you apply? So Utah will average the number of points in your group, and they will round down to the nearest whole number. So you want to be aware of that when you apply. Utah will also allow non-residents and residents to apply together in a group, but it's not going to help the non-residents' odds. That permit, should your group application draw, is still going to come out of the non-resident quota. And if there's a case where that permit's been allocated to someone else, they will reject your application and move past it. Utah will not over-allocate permits for a group application to satisfy the number of people on that app. So generally speaking, I would advise people to apply as a single applicant unless maybe you're trying to piggyback somebody else's points to help you jump up into the category of, high bonus point holders. You really want to look at it and play with it and see if it makes sense. If you got a buddy you really want to hunt with, maybe it makes sense. But generally speaking, I think you're probably better off applying as a single applicant. Another question I get is, can you surrender a permit in the state of Utah if you draw it and you can't hunt? And you can surrender your permit as long as you do so 30 days prior to your hunt. You will actually be reinstated your preference or bonus points. You have to surrender it 30 days prior. Now also, you'll only get the number of points that you had prior to that draw. You won't actually get an extra point for that year's draw, but you can surrender a permit. Utah is a state that I would tell you the odds of drawing limited entry hunts, once in a lifetime species hunts are so hard. If you draw that permit, I would move hell and high water to go hunting in the state of Utah. The hunting's really good. And if you draw that permit, I would count on going hunting. Now, of course, there are always life situations that pop up. You can surrender that permit, but you got to do it 30 days prior to your hunt, and you won't get a point for that year, but you would get your points back prior to applying. So something to consider. It seems like every year I get asked this question. It seems like people are drawing more permits than I am, but people are always asking what states they can surrender permits. Another question I often get asked is about cow, elk, or doe antelope hunting opportunities in the state of Utah. And those are available to you in a separate draw. And that draw typically opens early in June, and you can actually apply for cow elk hunts. Those are allocated on a true preference point system, similar to general season deer. So if you want to apply for cow elk hunting opportunities, that's your option early June. There's also the ability to apply for bonus points if you missed the main draw. So if you missed that draw deadline for the main draw, you can also apply for points only during the antlerless time frame application, which is in early June. I also often get asked about over-the-counter elk hunting opportunities in the state of Utah. And there are over-the-counter opportunities on any bull units, which are units that are kind of set aside where people can hunt and take any bull. Typically, those are pretty tough hunts. Normally, they fit in one of two categories, one being there aren't that many elk in those units, or two, there's a decent number of elk, but there's a lot of private land. There are a few that have decent numbers of elk and decent amounts of public land, but you really got to dig in and do your research. Now, the other opportunity for over-the-counter elk tags are spike tags. So any limited entry unit in the state of Utah, you can buy an over-the-counter spike tag and you can hunt spikes on those areas. Those tags typically go on sale mid-July. There are archery, muzzleloader, and rifle tags. We will include more information in that within the application strategy article. We'll also probably do a subsequent article as that deadline becomes closer. So be aware that there are opportunities in the state of Utah to buy over-the-counter elk tags. So be aware of it. You're never completely out of it. You could always run to Utah and buy an over-the-counter elk tag and get a chance to go hunting. Lastly, I often get asked about seasons. What seasons should I apply for? What do I want to hunt and when and why? So Utah has a plethora of seasons. They have early archery seasons, they've got early rifle seasons, they've got muzzleloader seasons. They recently added late archery elk hunts on the limited entry elk units. Very few tags, hard hunting in December, but there is an opportunity to hunt late season. There's also some mid-season rifle elk hunts that have been added in October during the spike hunt. So you got a little bit of competition there, but the bulk of the permits for those limited entry elk hunts are allocated during that middle rifle season. Basically what Utah's trying to do is they're trying to spread out the opportunity. They're trying to cycle more people through the draw system, trying to get more people an opportunity to go hunting. So you've really never had more options than you've got going into 2025. There's a lot of opportunities, no matter the season, the weapon that you want to hunt. It really is just a matter of diving into your insider research platform and deciding what dates work for you and for what weapon. So there's a lot of hunting opportunities in the state of Utah. So that pretty much wraps up all the things I think you need to know. In conclusion, I would tell you Utah is a great state to hunt. We have really good quality elk. We've got good quality limited entry deer. Once in a lifetime species is really good hunting should you draw a permit. But if you look at the odds for those species, either as a resident or a non-resident, you'll see pretty quickly that they're pretty dang tough to draw. So I often get asked, should I even apply in Utah? I think personally you should apply in Utah, based on the fact that there is the random component to those limited entry and once in a lifetime species. Also, within a few years, you can plan on drawing a general season deer tag. Now those general season deer hunts, they're general season. Typically the buck to doe ratios are going to be in that 15 to maybe 18 per 100 doe range. They're not always killing big giant trophy bucks on general season units, although every year there will be a few of them harvested. Typically what those are is just a good opportunity to get out, go hunting on public land, get an opportunity to harvest a buck. So I think general season deer hunting is worth keeping you applying, keeping you engaged, keeping you applying for any species that you're interested in hopes that you draw one of those and then plan on going on a general season deer hunt in the state of Utah, maybe every 3 to 5 years. So that would be my advice to you. Dive in, take a look at all the information within your insider research platform. We cover everything that you would ever need to know. I hope that you guys apply in Utah. I hope that you stop in and say hey, because that's where I live. But good luck in the draw, plan on applying, and good luck later this fall.